All right, so here's the thing. For this to be a great event, we're going to require a little bit of participation. If that means you're on the video cast, we want you typing and chatting and asking your questions. Because I said, you're only one idea away from a new level of prosperity. From more clarity around your soul purpose, which we'll talk about what soul purpose is. But to find ideas, how do you consistently find the right ideas? How do you consistently find the right answers? Anyone have an idea? That helps, vibrating in the right frequency, because now you can actually pay attention and see what's right there. Anyone else? Ask better questions. I love it. Ask better questions. You know, a lot of times when we're stuck in a problem, we just can't see past the problem. That's why we're in it. And it takes asking a better question to solve it. Some of the worst ways to solve problems is saying, well, I can't afford it, so you've already defeated yourself. How can I make more money? Not a powerful question. How can I make more money? That's a weak question. Most of America wakes up asking that question, by the way, and most people aren't more prosperous. So there are more powerful questions you can ask of yourself to find what's really necessary to go to that next level. So I'm going to give Leslie a chance to say a few words. Otherwise, you know how I get when I'm going, if you've seen me speak before.
Well, is the mic working? Can you hear it, kind of? Okay. You know, the whole reason that I do what I do with the books and everything is because my husband and I, when we first got married, we felt stuck. We got ourselves into some pretty deep financial pits and had dreams. And we wanted to live those dreams, and we just kept getting stuck. And one thing that I learned over the last 20 years is this one principle, above all, is that the solution to every problem is just one idea away. The solution to every problem is only an idea away. And so really, when you're stuck, it's not because you don't have the resources you need, it's because that idea that you're needing just hasn't quite showed up yet. And I know somebody in here mentioned vibrating at a higher level or at a different level on a different frequency to get the idea. Let me just share that analogy with you so that you know kind of where that's coming from. If I were to have a radio and I bring it in this room and I set it on a table right here and I turn it on and say we hear country music, okay? Did the radio suck the music into the room? No. It was already there. Did it attract the music? You hear people talk about the law of attraction. I like to consider it more like the law of vibration or the law of frequencies because everything you need is already within reach. Just like the music is already in this room, and the radio just makes it audible. We are like a radio. We are like a receiver. And just like everything in the world vibrates at a molecular level, the chair you're sitting on, the table, the wall, if you zoom in on a molecular level, there's atoms and molecules bumping around, right? At least that's a model that we've come to accept from 9th grade chemistry because it helps explain how things work and why things happen the way they do. So if you picture yourself, put your hand up, and you're made of flesh and bones, and your body is made up of atoms and molecules as well, and they vibrate at a molecular level, right? So we are a buzzing collection of particles that are vibrating. And that vibration changes depending on our thoughts and our feelings. Our feelings are determined by our thoughts, and our thoughts are our choice. We choose our thoughts, right? So if we want to change the way we're vibrating, we change our thoughts. It changes how we feel, and that's how we change the kind of broadcast that we receive. If I'm listening to country music on this radio and I don't want country anymore, I want classical, am I going to call up the country music station and say, okay, I am kind of getting sick of this country music, could you send me some classical now? What are they going to say? They're like, well, no, this is who we are, this is what we do. If you want classical, you've got to be the one to change your dial. And so everything in your life, the way it looks right now, the car you drive, the relationships that you have, the amount of money that comes into your life is a function of the level, the frequency that you vibrate at, because it's your frequency that determines which ideas are going to reach your brain. The ideas that you're looking for are in this room, just like the classical music is in this room. Stop and think about that for a minute. If you have a relationship issue that you're trying to solve, or a business problem, a dilemma that you're trying to solve, that idea is in this room, just like classical music is in this room, just like country music is in this room. And you, as a radio station, can tune into that by changing you. And you change that by changing your thoughts, changing the way you feel, and it changes your vibration and you tap into it. You get those sparks. You're like, oh, I got it. I got it. Well, you're not going to get it by saying the non-powerful questions. Garrett, what were some of those non-powerful questions?
The simple one is, how can I make more money?
How can I make more money?
Well, and it's most common, I think.
Yeah.
Why me?
Why me?
I know that I've said that before. I'm not pretending I haven't said some of these things. That's how I kind of figured out they're not the most powerful questions.
That's how he knows. That's how I know too. No, it's true. And so if you're facing a challenge and you speak the words, I don't know how I'm going to solve this, what have you just done? You've planted a seed that puts you at a vibration that cuts you off from the solution that you're looking for.
Well, we're just masters at proving ourselves right. I mean, saying a statement and actually doing everything we can to prove it right. So if I label Leslie a certain way that's not empowering, I'm going to look for all evidence to prove my opinion right. Same thing happens when we talk about ourselves. I can't do it. Yep, you're right. You can't. It's too complicated. Sure is. I mean, we make these declarations, and it becomes a sprouted seed that starts to infiltrate our mind with scarcity, of fear, of doubt, of worry, of frustration. And so I'm not saying that a better question is the whole solution. I'm just saying it sure is a good way to take the step in the right direction. It's a much better way to open yourself to possibility. And look, sometimes, there were times in my life, and we'll share, if you guys are okay, we'll share some of our background story of how this came about and some of the, how we thought of some of these things, but most importantly, some of the suffering and pain and poor decision making or limited beliefs or scarcity that we faced, maybe as a way to relate to some of the characters. But, that's how. It's not like everyone just comes and has it completely figured out, totally gets it, and that life's completely easy. I don't care how much money you have or don't have. I don't care what kind of job you have. We face certain challenges, but it's how people address those challenges, what they say about themselves, what questions they ask of themselves, who they surround themselves with, and then what actions they choose to take. And I like that, that we'll just have it out on the table that, look, the law of attraction, as far as the secret goes, isn't going to get you too far. It'll get you broke pretty fast because it's fairly narcissistic at best. And if you're not vibrating at a certain level and you don't have the right prosperity equation, you can meditate your way to wealth all you want and not see the wealth come to you, because you've got to have the right level of consciousness. You've got to have an awareness, because as Leslie said, the opportunities are all there, but half the time they're invisible to us because if we're in scarcity, we can't see it.
So write this down. One thing I want to make sure that you remember from being at this event is that if you've read Jackrabbit Factor, I think some of you may have read Jackrabbit Factor and not quite gotten to Portal to Genius yet. I wrote Jackrabbit Factor because I had had this major breakthrough in my life, and after attending more than 100 seminars, the lights went on. And I thought, well, good grief, why didn't they just say it like this? I thought, somebody's got to write that book, I've read all these other books.
Great profit model.
I like that. But what's funny, and it wasn't really funny at the time, is that after writing Jackrabbit Factor and thinking, oh, I've got this all figured out, life's just going to be from now on, we had a little bit of this, and then it's like life pulled the rug out from under us. And in the middle of it, I was thinking, oh my word, what has just happened? This isn't supposed to happen to the Jackrabbit lady, What are people going to think? What's going to happen? What if we run out of money? What if it doesn't work anymore? Are these things really true? Are these principles, do they work? How many of you have felt that way? Maybe you had a taste of, it works, and then all of a sudden it's like the laws are suspended. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, where'd they go? They were so dependable 2 weeks ago. I don't know what's going on now. And what I found out was that they are still true. They do still work. There is opposition in all things, and there is no witness until after the trial of your faith. I'm going to throw that one in there. Because we were thrown into some situations that allowed me to test the principles at a deeper, tougher, more intense, brain-racking, heart-wrenching scenario. Because there are people that are going through those kinds of things that if I was just talking about jackrabbit factor principles with Legos and paying the electric bill, they weren't going to be able to believe that what we have to offer can really help with the big things too. So we got a few big things to test them too. And I don't know that we'll go into what some of those big things are. I know that we will in the teleseminar series a little bit. But for about 2 years, when things were in reversal mode, and I'm thinking, you know, do I pull the books off the shelf? Do I call all the distributors and say, never mind, I think it's not true anymore? I just didn't know I didn't know what to do. And you know, the little voice in the back of my head just kept saying, Leslie, you don't, and you might want to write this down too, because I'm sure that there are people in this room and on the webcast who are going to face this if you haven't already, where maybe you've shared these principles with somebody else, and then it's come back and you've had to be challenged a little bit on them. But you do not make the principles true or false by how well you're living them. You do not make the principles true or false by how well you, me, are living them. I was doing the best I knew how. I was doing the best, what had worked before in controlling my thoughts, in seeing a challenge come up and turning it to our benefit. I was doing all the things that we'd been doing that created such a breakthrough before, but it just was taking so long to see the next breakthrough, and I began to wonder if it was ever going to come. And what I learned through that period of time is what's in Portal to Genius. That's why I had to write the book. I had to write the sequel to explain, I'd only scratched the surface before, and I'm so fired up about what's in that book that you can see these challenges, these reversals come, and know with certainty that they are part of that journey to where you're trying to go. It's part of it. It shows up and you can say, thank you, now I know why that you're here, and I'm going to do with you what I'm supposed to do with you and put it behind me, because the person I'm going to be on the other side of it is who I need to be to receive what I'm asking for. Let me say that a different way. You set a goal, a lofty goal on what you want your life to look like, the relationships, the situations, whatever it is, the picture of your ideal world. You set that goal, you set that intention, and you go for it, and you know that you can accomplish it. You don't know what you're going to have to face along the way, but you know it's possible. Anything's possible. If you can conceive it and believe it, you can achieve it. Napoleon Hill was right. He's the one that said that, right?
Sure.
It's a true principle. It's a true principle. But what you find out is that you set that goal, and The Secret didn't tell you this in that movie. You set the goal, and what shows up is what is appearing to be opposite of what you asked for. And most people, by default, look at what showed up and say, you know what? That's not what I asked for. That's opposite. This whole law of attraction thing's a crock. It must not work. Okay? Would you agree that that's the general response when you go for something? You go for the goal, you set the goal, you go after it, and what shows up is the absolute opposite. Things get worse instead of better. Any of you experienced a little bit of that? Things get worse instead of better. It is in that moment that you either are a victor, and there's a reason why I chose that guy's name in the book. You become a victor, or you are defeated. In that moment, that's the moment when millionaires are created. That's the moment when winners are created. And we're all winners. I'm not trying to class anybody like that. I'm just saying that it's when the challenge shows up that you prove your stuff. It's not when things are rosy. It's not when things are going your way. It's when the challenge shows up. And so, if you want to be this success, how can you ever be that success if you never get the challenge? The challenge is there for a reason. And as you respond to it according to the laws of thought, looking at it in the right perspective, you pass the test, you move beyond it, you're a different person, and you're going to find out that when you've moved those behind you enough, the person you are on this side, the goal, just is a natural outgrowth of your life. It's not like you were handed the lottery. It's like, you know what, I am that person. That is my life now. And it feels right. It's not a big, amazing change. You've grown into it. You don't, who was it that said, you don't attract that which you want, but that which you are? So.
I said it once, but I'm pretty sure I got it from someone else. James Allen.
James Allen, thank you. Anyway.
Yeah, on that line of thinking, I was just at an event last week and met Glenn Morshower. He's the guy that plays Aaron Pierce in 24, if you've any 24 fans in here, or he plays in Friday Night Lights, or there's no other living actor that's played more generals than this guy. And he said something from stage that I thought was pretty profound. He said, every one you encounter in life is there to help you. He says that may never be their intention, but it's there for lessons for you to grow. And so some of the most challenging people, maybe some of the most challenging circumstances have been some of the insight to the most profound breakthroughs for you, the most profound insights for you. As a matter of fact, some of the greatest pain in my life became some of the greatest teachings that I was able to help other people with because of certain financial circumstances, certain financial mistakes. You know, a lot of people say, well, how did you think of the concepts in killing sacred cows? I'm like, yeah, I tried most of them, and they didn't seem to work. And the difference between me and many people is I stopped believing the marketing and just started looking at results in my life and asking better questions.
Garrett?
Yeah.
Microphone up.
Okay. Like I'm supposed to do like I'm a rock star, like this? Okay, sweet. All right, I want to take care of you guys. You know, there's like 500 plus there, so I really want to take care of them. That is, if you're not checking email or, you know, on browsing the internet. I'm going to start talking real loud if that's the case, and then everyone here is going to be upset, so make sure that you pay attention. So before we get into this prosperity equation that we're talking about tonight, I just want to give some background on the stories that Leslie's talking about. I mean, I found 2008 to be a pretty interesting year in my life anyway. I don't know if anyone else had a tough year in 2008 financially, but here I was, the financial author, coming out with a book that hit the New York Times bestseller list. And a story that I haven't told very often is, on the day that we got New York Times was the same day that our financial firm hit the Inc. 500, if you're familiar with that, the top 500 fastest growing privately held companies in the United States. And I also found out that I lost $200,000 on a real estate deal, so I found that to be quite ironic, that here I am, the financial author that's making a financial mistake. But a lot of it came from 2006, when I had 2 business partners die, and I started to declare that I was going to make sure that their legacy continued no matter what. Which sounds really noble, sounds pretty good. Maybe some of you would come up here and pat me on the back and say, you're such a great person, Garrett. I'm so glad that you would do such a thing. But what you have to understand is, at the same time, I sacrificed my own legacy. Especially the legacy when it came to my family, because I was waking up at 5 in the morning, going down to the office an hour away, working until, you know, basically when I came home, my 1-year-old was asleep, and sometimes my wife was kind of awake, but, you know, it wasn't much of a life for them. And it became the type of situation where I gained 22 pounds. Where I could hardly make a good decision at the office because I was constantly bombarded and overwhelmed and just not living a life that I loved, which was the very thing I was talking about when I was doing the radio show. So I was pretty much a hypocrite, and as soon as my wife, who, nothing like a wife to bring this kind of thing to your attention, right? I mean, I remember when she told me how extraordinary I was in all these ways and what an ordinary father I was. It's a pretty profound moment. And we all have those moments in life where we have choice. We have the choice to defend our actions or to choose more powerful actions. And unfortunately, too many people defend their past actions so that they don't have to be wrong. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about living an extraordinary life. And so I made I think, a good choice, because in 6 days I gave that business to the key executives and I chose to office from home. All of a sudden, I found my portal to genius because I started writing Killing Sacred Cows, and I had been working on a kind of a book for 2 years that I only got 72 pages in, because Part of it was my purpose was super weak. I mean, my purpose was I want to sell a bunch of books so I could be really cool and make a lot of money by getting a bunch of clients. That's not really a good purpose for a book. It doesn't make for good writing. But when I got really clear that there was some financial cancer that most of our country was going through, and that people were not living their purpose because they were chasing dollars, and that money was primarily a liability for people, not an asset, then I had a passion for it. Then I had purpose that drew it out of me, that flooded out of me, to the point where I wasn't even sleeping some nights because I was just up typing, and then I was spending the day with my family, which was actually completely rejuvenating. So I didn't require as much sleep because I was doing things in life that mattered to me, to my legacy, to what mark I wanted to leave in the world. And so I could give you a bunch of excuses of why 2008 was a tough year for me. I'm not even going to blame it on the economy. All the economy did was expose where we were totally sloppy, where we were totally not creating enough value for the people that we were working with. As a matter of fact, if anyone had experienced Freedom Fast, but my CEO, I think, was the process from 2005 to 2006. Anyone in this room go through that program? Good, because it kind of sucked. You know, it wasn't like a tremendous value creation, and we were making a bunch of money because there was a lot of hype around it, there was a lot of conversation, there was a lot of, you're in the cool club if you're doing it, but the economy in 2008 totally exposed that. And it was really about this revolution of people were looking for true solutions. They were looking for soul purpose. It's about time soul purpose entered the financial world, because soul purpose is your greatest contribution. It's your passions, it's your talents, it's your values combined for the highest context of your life, which is your life's mission. That's soul purpose. Everyone has one, not everyone lives one. But those that do, we want to make sure that money's not the obstacle for it, that it's a fuel for that it's in alignment with that. And Portal to Genius is one of the things I feel in alignment with my soul purpose, but especially when I talk about the way that it was produced. But let me just tell you that, I had certain goals, New York Times bestseller, make a bigger impact. And in 2008, it was, well, do you really believe, Mr. Gunderson, in what you're talking about? Because we're going to test you. We're going to see if you really believe. And there were times where I was going to go on stage and talk about finance that I was completely struggling financially before I went out there. And what most people would do that's absolutely painful is pretend. Pretend that it's all good. Pretend that it's all figured out. Have you ever heard those speakers that act like they've got everything together? I don't know, when I hear them, I'm like, dude, do you want me just not to like you, or what's the deal? They're like, look at all these cool people that I know that think I'm the coolest dude in the world and how I just live the most perfect life and do exactly. Look, that doesn't exist. People have challenges. And there's some reality to it. And you know what alleviated a lot of that burden is when I just started telling people about it. But not just telling it like, hey, please come feel sorry for me and engage in this conversation, hug and cry with me. But instead I said, here's something, and here's what I'm doing about it. And here's what you could learn about it. And here's what we could all do about these types of circumstances, because these are just mine, but we all have our circumstances. We all have our stories. We all have our obstacles. We all have our perceived failures, but they're only failure if we allow them to be, if we choose to give it that type of attention. So that's, this is the story that I don't tell all that often, but I'll tell you, if it didn't happen, I don't know if Portal to Genius would exist. And the same with Trevin and you. I mean, Leslie and Trevin had to go through some stuff to really figure this out. And the cheesiest story in the book is a completely true story, which maybe Leslie will have time to tell you about. Like the things you're like, oh, please, guys, come on. Yeah, this is fairy tale, silly ending. No, that really happened to Leslie and Trevin.
All right, when you guys get to the part at the end, or near the end, where Richard and Felicity are out at the restaurant, raise your hand if you know which part I'm talking about, if you've read it. True story. True story. That really happened.
And I planted that seed a little bit, I think, when I was talking to you guys. I'm like, hey, this is just how I'm going to do things from here on out. I'm going to choose faith over fear. I'm going to go with the belief that if I'm living and I'm totally committed to my sole purpose, that the finances will follow. If I'm doing it in the right context, not out of greed, because I got to tell you, I used to own 100 real estate properties, totally out of greed. Just, I would pretend like, oh, I'm a good financial example to people, showing what you could. I didn't like most of the properties. I didn't want to go to most properties. As a matter of fact, most of us wouldn't go to most of the properties at certain times of the day. Right? So tell me what the real value creation is there. Now, there's a reason behind telling you all this story, and that is, even if you have a financial issue, Whether that financial issue is a personal finance issue where you're saying, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I'm going further into debt, I don't know where the next dollar is going to come from, or you've got an idea that you just say, I don't know how to fund this. See, the best ideas, you know where the best ideas exist right now? In the graveyard. From all those people that didn't do anything about their ideas. Whatever problems we're facing, most of them could have been solved, but people are too afraid. The number one reason most people don't share their ideas is because they go, what will others think? I mean, if we're just honest, that's what happens a lot of time, because it's like, I've got this idea, I don't know if I can really do it. I got to tell you this, I couldn't have done any of the ideas I've had, none, if it wasn't for other people. I mean, there's sometimes I get introduced as, here's Garrett, a self-made millionaire. That is the biggest lie in the world. I have never met a self-made millionaire or self-made billionaire. I met someone that got so honed in on their sole purpose, someone like Warren Buffett that says, all I do is read and allocate capital. My team knows to keep me away from everything else so that we can continue to succeed. Right? And so that's the thing, is you don't have to know exactly how to accomplish it. But for most of us, because we don't, we never take the first step. I mean, I actually am so thankful that I didn't know what it was going to take. It's exhausting to think about making your book a New York Times bestseller if you've done it, because it is way more of the work than I thought it was going to be. To build the Freedom Fast Track, really glad no one told me what was going to go on there. A lot of work, but I love that I did that. I love the people that I've worked with in that, and that we're continuing to grow that and make that part of our mission, our vision, an expression of sole purpose, an organization where that's why people are there, because they're there for purpose. They're not just there because there's a financial reward or they enjoy it a little bit. They're there because I got to tell you, Chris Miles was in the trenches in 2008 with me, bleeding through that. And I would be like, why are you still here, man? And you're like, when was the last time we paid you? He's like, because I believe in this. I know that it's going to work. I'm going to have faith rather than give in to the fear. And that's what happens most of the time, is that we have this seed of our sole purpose, and it starts to sprout, and it starts to grow. And we water it, but then someone pushes us over, and then, oh, someone spilled the water, well, I guess, and then we complain about the water being spilled rather than going out of our way to find more water to water it. And then we just think it's going to sprout up all of a sudden. And then sometimes we're like, oh, it still hasn't sprouted, but it's just right there below the surface. And the hardest point is when it breaks through the soil. That's the hardest point. It takes the most faith because you haven't seen it happen, and it's just got to inch its way up. And that's what happens with a lot of people's sole purpose. So I'm actually going to talk about financial capital here. Anyone want more financial capital in the form of like money or anything? Okay, because if not, we can meet afterwards and you can start donating it to causes I'm very intimate with, like, you know, my bank account and things like that if you really don't want it. So if you want more financial capital, what do you think drives financial capital, by the way? Anyone? Any suggestions? Value? Great. Confidence? Yeah, you know what's amazing is that money is so directly tied to confidence, it's crazy. I mean, think about all these people that have invested and lost money in the stock market. They put money, they didn't even know what stocks they own. They don't know who their mutual fund manager is. They don't even understand the expenses behind it. And then when it goes down, they lose confidence. That sucks because now they're not as productive. They're not thinking abundantly. Now they're just scarce because they have something with no influence, no passion, and no control. And this is what the world out there calls investing. I mean, that's what most people, if you say the word investing, synonymously they think stock market or potentially the real estate market. And I'm here to tell you that there are investors that never have to put a dollar in either one. Yet we all have a stock called ourselves. And the choices we make determine whether that goes up or down. And sometimes, no matter what, some people are going to have certain opinions that if you pay attention to, your stock's going to go down. If you don't, you realize that they're not buying your stock anyway, just move on. All right, so we got it clear that everyone wants more financial capital, that value, confidence, what else? You? Need? Okay, what we need, or what we perceive to need, right? Great. What else? Desire? Anybody else? So there's two things that are the most valuable resources that drive financial capital. Financial capital is a byproduct. We've said for years that dollars follow value, but value when created for other people, right? Value for yourself is called consumption, but value for other people, that's one of the things. In the world of cause and effect, value creation is the cause, money is the effect. That's why the question, how can I make more money, is a silly question. It's like going into a store saying, how can I get more receipts? Well, do you really want the receipt? Or do you want the meat? Or for you vegetarians, the fish, or for you vegans, the tofu, right? I don't want to leave anyone out there. The first thing, mental capital. This is a precious form of capital in which hopefully you're developing tonight. By attending, by taking notes, by paying attention, you're looking to develop new mental capital. Mental capital, what do you think that is? Learning? Ideas. Yep. Skills, yep. Positive self-talk, that could be mental capital for sure. Faith. Innovation, ingenuity. Innovative thinking. Experience. Totally. Knowing yourself. Great. So these are all forms of mental capital. Now, how do you develop the mental capital? There's reading, there's attending events, there's having great conversations, effort, there's experiencing something, like Leslie said. These are ways that we develop mental capital. And this is why, I may have offended a few people potentially when I said, hey, the secret's a big kind of narcissistic sham. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you don't have mental capital and you don't have awareness, I don't care what you're trying to attract into your life, you're not even going to recognize it. Because we attract who we are. And look, you could attract the best relationship in your life, but you'll destroy it if you haven't gotten clear about your sole purpose. If you haven't gotten clear about value creation. As a matter of fact, if you're in scarcity and you're going to try and use the law of attraction, you're just going to bring more destruction into your life. Because no rate of return, no discipline, no luck, no saving, none of that matters if you're in the scarcity mentality. Scarcity mentality is the destroyer of prosperity. So for some people, they think prosperity is in a product. But if there was a product that brought prosperity, why would we have salespeople? Wouldn't we all just own this thing? We'd call it a toll-free number, or we'd line up at a bank or whatever. We'd buy it. We'd be wealthy. Money is part of wealth, but it's not wealth in and of itself. Oh, I'm maybe rhyming again. I did this last time. Let's see if I can get in a flow and sound totally cheesy before the night's over. It's okay to laugh. And I'll cue you to laugh if you don't laugh to my liking, just so you know. I always tell my wife, I'm like, I'm going to do some stand-up comedy, and she goes, oh, you're not that funny. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm funny, and I'm going to do stand-up comedy. She goes, you think you're funny because you're speaking in front of people that you're not expected to be funny for, and you say hey, that's supposed to be funny, and they laugh. She goes, that's not real comedy. And I'm like, but I can do, if I could say I'm going to do stand-up comedy, I could do it. And so we went on a trip once, and I tried it, and it didn't work as well. So now she references that. But I'm like, hey, I now know how not to do it in that way, and so I'm getting closer. I'm going to use the jackrabbit factor principles and get this figured out. But this is the closest thing for me tonight. Okay, I was on a point. Can you remind me? Or did I totally distracted you too? Mental capital.
I was going to ask you if stand-up comedy is your sole purpose.
It's not, and she reminds me of that, and I'm like, but it's entertaining. It's not like I have to be, every moment doing, and it's,
You can hire it.
Yeah, and I could get better at speaking and entertain you guys more so you could learn more. Edutainment, right? So who's with my wife on this thing, by a show of hands? Okay, yeah. I want you, of all people, Adam, if you guys watch him he has a little weekly TV show he's pretty funny, actually. I'm not. But the time I was on his show, paidtoplaytv.com, and on the episode, he started out with the worst joke ever, talking about, how you hear, best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup? He talked about the best part of waking up is soldiers in your cup. And I was like, wow, do people watch this because it's a train wreck or because there's actually some... Oh, wait, this is turning into that, so I'm going to make sure and get to some content here. Mental capital. So how do you learn best?
Can I add something on the mental capital experience?
Please save me, yes.
I piped in on the experience piece because just because you go through an experience doesn't mean you automatically gain some mental capital from it. If you want to test the principles, if you want to know that these principles are dependable, and when I say these principles, I'm talking about the principles of success, and we're not going to enumerate them here tonight, but the ones that you can depend on, that you can rely on, that you're thrown a challenge, and you can know that, all right, if I respond to this challenge in this way, I can know for a fact that everything's going to turn out for the best. That's what the principles are for, is to give you confidence through the mire. But when you have experience, and I threw that in because experience is a challenge that comes your way, and you test the principle, and you prove it to be true. That's the mental capital I'm talking about. I'm not just saying, yeah, I had a hard week, that's experience, therefore I have mental capital. If you responded to that hard week in a non-successful way, that's going to be a ding on your personal stock.
Mental
value.
capital is an attractor. I mean, when you know the best way to have mental capital? Sole purpose. Sole purpose is your best mental capital. And here's how you know it's in alignment with sole purpose.
Can we just make sure everybody understands what you mean by sole purpose? You're so good at saying what it is real fast and moving on. I'm like, you don't know how profound this is. This is huge. Okay, slower. Again.
It's your SOUL, sole purpose. And you're welcome to tell me how profound things are anytime you'd like.
It's massively profound.
Totally cool.
I can't wait to get to the story behind the story.
Okay, so sole purpose, SOUL. Sole purpose is your unique meaning unique to you. No one else has this same combination on earth. People have similarities. They might have similar abilities. They might even have similar passions. They might have similar values to you, but no one has the exact combination that you do, right? So it's values, passions, and abilities. Those are the key combinations there, combined for the highest context of living, which is your purpose or life's mission, okay? So I could be really good at something, but if I'm just digging a hole because of that ability, that doesn't usually have a lot of purpose. Purpose calls it forward in a much more powerful way. Because when there's purpose, there's persistence. And there has to be persistence for anything extraordinary, because we will be tested. So
he talks a lot about soul purpose, and the reason I think it's so profound, it was hugely profound for us because he showed up in our life at the time when we were just scrambling, trying to figure out what just happened. You know, the rug had been pulled out from under us. This was the teacher that showed up when the student was ready for what we needed to learn next. And what I've discovered is that when you are living in your soul purpose, when you are operating in that groove, you know, you're in the groove, doing what you know you were put here to do, it goes beyond knowing who you are, where you came from, and where you're going. It's what are you here to accomplish? What impact do you have to make on this planet before you move on? What's the legacy you're going to create? So when you are in that groove, operating in that place, the jackrabbit factor principles, those laws of success, work like. So if you've set a goal out here that's not in line with your soul purpose, you can apply the principles of success to make it go, but nothing like when you're doing what you're put here to do. When you're doing what you're put here to do, the service you are here to render, the value that you're here to create for others, that contribution that you are uniquely equipped to perform, then all the resources of the whole world, all that unseen help, all of that strength and power that you can't even really put your finger on, combines behind you to help you make that happen. And so if you're struggling to see these principles work for you, it could be that you haven't quite found your soul purpose yet. Portal to Genius can help you do that. It follows about 5 or 6 different characters who are all kind of fumbling around until they all find it.
Well, here's the thing.
And it's unique for each one of them. It's different.
Soul purpose is your only financial security. Soul
Write that
purpose
down.
is your only financial security. And if you don't believe me, you can ask the people in Mexico when the peso crisis happened. Because even if they had, millions, and maybe it took hundreds of millions there, in the bank, when that currency was devaluing so bad. That didn't provide financial security. Or in Russia, there were people that, once again, they knocked over the wheelbarrow full of money and took the wheelbarrow and left the money behind because it wasn't worth anything. Sole purpose is your only financial security. And you know you're in alignment with it when there's an additional passion to the ability. I don't know if you guys know, but I started when I was 19 selling life insurance. That's how I entered the financial services field. I got to tell you, I was pretty good at it as far as I made the top clubs and all this, youngest one in this one company history. But I wasn't that passionate about it. Can you imagine if I was up here talking about life insurance for 2 hours? And I was talking like this about it. I mean, you guys are like, who is this weirdo? You were already thinking that, but you'd even think it more. And so that's how I knew it wasn't necessarily my sole purpose. It was utilizing one of the abilities. But aligning money to sole purpose and connecting people to their sole purpose and removing money as an obstacle, preventing people from sole purpose, now that is something that's in total alignment for me. Because there's not only the ability to articulate it, to understand it, to convey concepts, but there's a massive passion behind it.
I got to say something on that.
Okay.
About 15 years ago, I was watching the movie Rudy. Who remembers Rudy?
Who's cried during the movie, Rudy?
Huh?
Come on, man. How many men have cried during that movie that are willing to?
So I'm watching this movie Rudy, and I'm watching the movie, and I am just absorbed at his passion. He wanted to play for Notre Dame football, remember? And he was living it when he was a kid. He was just practicing it in his head, and it was all he ever thought about. He did anything he could do to make sure he was going to go to that school, which was an expensive school. His family wasn't going to be able to send him there. He went to a community college nearby. I mean, it just shows, and it's based on a true story, shows all the things that he did to get as close to that dream as he possibly could. And he was a runt. And finally, you'd have to see it, but through a series of events, he ends up on the team. And at the very last game of the season, when it was like his probably last year in the school or whatever, he got to play. And the whole circumstances around that, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Powerful, powerful movie. You know what my thought was at the end? My thought was, I wish I felt that way about something. I know that the principles are true and they work when you're passionate about something and you want something bad enough and you just have that, you can't sleep, it's all you think about. I wish I felt that way about something because I don't even know what that would be. What do I want that bad? And so I'd try different goals on for size. I'd be like, okay, what about giving a bunch of money to the primary children's hospital where my son had surgery at 4 days old? Well, yeah, I think I could get passionate about that. An obstacle comes along and I'm not passionate about it anymore. What is it inside of me that could create that kind of desire, that would drive that kind of power? And I didn't have an answer. And what I didn't realize was that at that time, I was going through experiences that was preparing me to discover that. I was going through a lot of hardships related to money that was creating a real need to find solutions. And by the time the solution finally came, it was such a contrast, flip side from one to the other, that I'm like, oh, I have to share this. And I had passion. But it only came from my hardships. And I'm not saying that everybody has to find their passion because of their hardships, but that's where mine came from. I mean, who are these people that are out advocating certain causes? It's usually people who had personal experience with a need for that cause, right? So again, once you've found what that is for you, and at that time when I didn't have an answer to that question, what could I be that passionate about? It became my objective to find something that I could be passionate about. So how's that for a goal? Set the goal that I am going to find my sole purpose. I'm going to discover it. I'm going to identify it. I'm going to see it and recognize it. I'm going to recognize the little nudges that take me there. And you'll know it when you find it. And you're not, I mean, you're going to be put in a position to learn the things you need to learn to help cultivate that along the way. This event, other events like it, whatever, may be a part of that process, cultivating you, preparing you so that when you do identify it, you are equipped to take the next step with it, right? So let's get back to that.
So if you ever think, by the way, you have a money problem, you never have a money problem. And that may not be a popular statement, but if you think you have a money problem, I'm going to say that again, you never have a money problem. It's not the money that's the problem. That's the symptom that there may be a problem. But it's always from one of these more precious forms of capital, the first being mental capital that I shared. So you're only an idea away. Or what I believe to be the most precious form of capital, which is relationship capital. So it's really our mental capital and our relationship capital that are the drivers for financial capital. What do I mean by relationship capital? People, who you surround yourself with. Connections. Great, perfect.
About who you serve, who you contribute to.
Yeah, marketplace, family, friends, organizations, you know. There's different forms of relationship capital because people that I have thousands of subscribers on my email list, and there's a form of relationship capital there with them because I can communicate with them, but it's a different form of relationship capital with you and us tonight because we can see each other, we can talk to each other, and there's more relationship capital if you're communicating through some emails or through some chats with us on the video cast. And by the way, if you're on the video cast, you can go to portaltogenius.com/secrets to find out, because I mean, no one thought that like this was completely free, right? Did anyone think that we might sell you something tonight by a show of hands? By a show of hands? Cool, you will not be disappointed. I just want to let you know that. So that's kind of the deal though. I mean, we offer some value and then we take out of 2 hours, 5 minutes to tell you about some ways to continue to get value. And because I have no apology for that, because I have total passion in that, I don't think that this event will change or transform anyone's life tonight. I'm just going to give you that news. I don't think that reading Portal to Genius is going to do it all for you. Or Killing Sacred Cows, or my New Rules to Get Rich program, or even the Fast Track on Demand or the School of Life Mastery. These are all systems and tools to deliver mental capital to you, to elevate your consciousness, to be more prepared, but it's going to take more than just that to have full transformation. It's going to take some accountability beyond that. It's going to take some heavy implementation into your life. It's going to take some coaching and one-on-one personalization to really have that full transformation, because that's what I feel is the deeper form of relationship capital. For me, there's plenty of people that I've paid to get information from that I could probably read in several books and on several websites, but the relationship and the condensed, organized information is well worth it. And paying, I tend to usually perform better than when I get things for free. When I get things for free, I typically treat them that way. When I pay for something that I invest a decent amount of money in, I typically take action as a way to make sure that I get my investment back and then some. So, to this equation, if you think you got a money problem, it's a problem here. Either a thinking issue or a people issue. Now, what that means is, if you're in debt, debt is just a symptom. There is a deeper form. There's a deeper root to debt. And probably the most common place where we have debt, I'll talk about my debt first. Okay, so I bought some real estate that didn't work out. Anyone ever bought real estate that didn't perform how they thought it was going to? Okay, cool. Just so I think anyone that's ever bought real estate, more than one property anyway, probably has experienced that to some degree. And I used leverage. I used bank money. I used other people's money. And what I think is very risky is when you leverage financial capital without adequate mental and relationship capital. And one of the big mistakes I made was depending completely upon relationship capital without having the right mental capital. Oh, so-and-so's good at it. They know what they're doing. I'm just going to hand my money over. Nope, that doesn't really work out. That philosophy of, oh, it's going to be passive income, watch your money pass you right by and down a drain. That's what I've seen happen all too often. I know I'm talking about all the popular topics tonight, but this is the truth. I mean, if you have debt and it's because you made investments and you're trying to do the right thing, you didn't have adequate mental capital to get involved in that. That's the thing. You just didn't have the right mental capital. If, on the other hand, you have debt and it's because you're constantly loaning people money, you're constantly spending way more than you're making, it's a relationship capital issue. First of all, possibly relationship with yourself by not understanding the beautiful, magnificent, radiant version of soul purpose that you are, and instead you're caught up in some place where overspending is what's pacifying you. Or on the other hand, you got negative people in your life that are constantly draining you, that are constantly taking from you, and you continue to allow it, it's going to show up as negative financial capital. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Are you having conversations of wealth or conversations of complaint? That will be a key indicator of what's going on right here with your financial capital. That doesn't mean that we don't complain. Norm, do I complain a little bit sometimes? Yeah, I do. But I'm a committed complainer. A committed complainer has a complaint as a way to find out a resolution, not as something to talk about day in and day out. Right? So committed complaints are acceptable. It's called venting. It's called figuring out a solution. But complainers just keep complaining, and that's why wealth is evasive and elusive from their life, because they're not building conversations of wealth. Wealth is built through conversation. I mean, it's a conversation, it's a contract, it's inspiring someone to take some action based upon words. We overcomplicate it. We think that it's some crazy, difficult, equation that I learned in international finance that I mostly slept through in college. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's about how do you take your mental capital, how do you take this mental capital that does one of 3 things. Either one, it solves problems. Do we have problems right now out there in the world? Do you say that in the last few years people think there's more or less problems?
More.
Then there's more opportunity. The bigger the problem, the bigger the payoff. The problem is most people get totally in scarcity because it becomes selfish. And I'm just letting it go tonight. I'm not holding anything back. I hope no one thinks I'm being mean. I just really want to make sure that I'm super clear about this. And I'm not yelling at you. I'm just totally passionate about this. Now, Adam, I am yelling at you, but everyone else, I'm just totally passionate about this. So here's the thing. If wealth is built through conversation, and most of your conversation is about complaining, what's going to show up in your life? Debt. Debt. It's not opportunity. It's not possibility. You're not going to be able to see it because you're not building mental capital. You're actually diminishing it. You're not living soul purpose. You're actually losing it. So you got to be able to solve problems. Now, if you're in scarcity, you can't solve problems, and here's why. What I mean by scarcity is fear of loss, feeling like there's not enough, feeling like if someone else is wealthy, they've taken your share. So scarcity is a breeding ground
This is better,
for
Garrett.
survival.
Trade me.
Survival. This is the problem with the recession. The problem with the recession is that people go into survival mentality, and the economists help propagate this. They help promote this, because as soon as we hear there's a recession, what's the first thing you hear on the news from the economists? It's cut back, scale back, don't go eat out, fire people, get rid of, just hunker down and save and stop doing anything but sit around and worry. I mean, I know I'm being extreme there, but it's kind of the message, right? And so we exaggerate, because if the conversation creates so much of the reality, we become a self-fulfilling prophecy during a recession. Most people didn't even know a recession was going on until they saw it on the news, unless you're in real estate or mortgages. You really probably didn't feel it until you saw it on the news, and then you called your fave 5, right? And did you create wealth or complaining in that moment? Wealth or complaining? Survival mode is destructive, and here's why. Because it is self-ish. It's not about value creation for anyone else. Survival mode is about surviving, and if your main objective is survival, what's the best you're probably going to do? Survive. Well, isn't that exciting? I've told this story before, but it just reminds me of Mary Louise Zeller. She was in her late 40s, and her young son fell from 2 stories and really got hurt, and she felt like a complete failure because she couldn't protect her son. He pushed out a screen window and fell down, and he was hurt pretty bad, and she was thinking, oh, I'm a failure. She gained tons of weight. She got totally depressed, and one day she opened the newspaper, and it talked about Taekwondo being a way to get in good health, and she was finally fed up with the state that she was in and decided to go do Taekwondo. So for 2 years, she trained in Taekwondo. The first week, by the way, she said she slept in the bathtub one of the nights. She had to scoot down the stairs on her butt because she was so sore from inactivity for years. And then her master, Jun Rhee or something, he told her, okay, it's time to compete. She's like, no, I'm like 48, I don't compete. She goes, yep, you're going on the mat next week. And she says, when he says it, you just kind of do it. And for another 2 years, she lost every single match. And why do you think that is? She was so worried about getting hurt that she says, I just want to survive this. Please help me survive. And guess what she did for the 2 years? She completely survived. And that's where a lot of people get. And it's tough in this situation because when you're in survival mode, you're in defensive mode, and you're in worry mode. And worry is the most lazy form of activity because it never leads to productivity if you stay in the worry. Worry's not, and like, I'm going to go jog. Worry's like, I'm not going to sleep and I'm going to just lay here and think about it and root in it. So it's selfish and it breeds more scarcity. So, you know the best way out of this scarcity? Service. Serve. Call, even if you've got major problems going on, if you call someone else, find out what pain they're in, and find ways that you can help them, in the moment you're helping them, it can't be in scarcity when you're helping someone like that. It's a shift of consciousness. It's a shift through that action.
It's turning the dial on your radio.
It's turning the dial on your radio.
You'll get different ideas.
So what you got to do is help other people solve problems. And here's another weak question. This is weak, and I know that this is going to sound harsh, but this is a weak question. Hey, Chris, how can I create value for you? That is weak. One, I'm putting all the pressure on Chris. Chris, what if Chris doesn't even know me that well? What does he know that I can really create value with? The key to really getting access to people with multi-millions of dollars is this simple. You sit down, and rather than looking at them as money, you find out that, hey, you know what? There's something that they either completely love and enjoy and want more of, or there's something that they still have a problem with that creates persistent pain in their life. And so you ask some questions. I remember sitting down with Dan Sullivan, who's a mentor of mine, for the first time. And all I did was ask questions until the point where I figured out the number one thing on Dan's mind was getting more referrals. So we put on an event for Dan. We had 200 people show up to the event. We had one of his people come in and speak. He got more people in the coach program that night than any one individual had referred in a single day. I became in the top 3 of a program that had 3,300 students. And all of a sudden, I had access to go hang out with him at his house, personal phone calls, where I could get some coaching, where that's just not stuff that he does, because I created massive value for him. Because I found out what is it that he really wanted. So don't just ask, how can I create value? Ask, hey, what's going on in your life? What's working for you? What's not working for you? What projects are you involved with right now? What would make your life so much better if you could just solve and get rid of today?
Garrett, what would you say to somebody who's sitting here thinking, I don't have anything to offer important people?
You have a sole purpose. You have a sole purpose, for crying out loud. Sole purpose isn't about fame. It isn't about recognition. But the biggest problem with your sole purpose is if you don't see it because you discount it. We discount our sole purpose all the time. What do I have to offer?
Mostly because, and I'm going to pipe in again, sorry. Mostly because what comes natural to us, what we're good at, those things, we think everybody is. We think everybody knows what we know. We think everybody is good at what we're good at. And sometimes it takes having conversations with people who know you to help point those things out. Say, you know what, you are incredible. You're an incredible listener. Well,
so
I thought
there's an
everybody
action
was.
item, by the way. That's something to write down. Take, for breakfast, take someone out, get a juice, or, maybe even a coffee if you're on the video cast. People here probably not doing a lot of coffee, maybe a few of them. But, and just have a conversation. And this is hard for a lot of people that are going to be totally uncomfortable. Like, for me to say, Leslie, what do you think I'm good at? Oh, I don't want to be arrogant. That's so pompous. I can't believe No, it's like, hey, what, do you think I have certain abilities that you think, anything I'm natural at, anything that you would look for me to help you on?
And I'm going to throw this one out. One thing that Garrett is very, very good at is connecting people. He's a connector. And that is one of the probably most discounted qualities in people. One of those things that people don't recognize is that some people are people, and they know a lot of people, and they know this person and what they need, but they can't provide it, but they know this person and their talent, and that's what they need, so they put them together. Garrett does that all day long.
And that's just part of my equation. I'll give the secret sauce to that. It's not anything too special, but it will provide massive results. So as long as I'm taking away all the appeal, but it'll be real applicable in your life. Fair? When I'm talking to someone, the first thing that goes through my head is, how can I help? And if I can't, I say, who do I know that can? And one of the major problems that most people have in their soul purpose is they only ask the first question, not the second. And the problem is you say, how can I help? And you go, well, I don't really know if I'm real good at help. I'm just going to try. Now you've committed yourself to things you don't necessarily want to do.
And that aren't in
You've
your
got
soul
more
purpose.
things on your task list than you can ever get done. And now you're overcommitted, overstressed, overtired, wish you were spending time with your family, feel guilty because you're not, can't find any time for your soul purpose because you told everybody yes. We're addicted to yes. We want to be liked. The worst thing, though, is to say yes and not do it. That totally sucks. It's even worse. You better just saying no very pleasantly. I had someone say, hey, I'm going to be in town, would love to get together. And I was like, you know what, I'm working on 3 soul purpose projects right now. I'm totally immersed in it. And maybe next time you're in town, but this just isn't a good time for me. And they responded, hey, thanks. What are you working on? I'm like, these 3 things. They said, oh, I know someone that could help you with that one if you're looking. I'm like, what do they do? He says, oh, they have 1,000 blogs that do. I'm okay, yeah. So it actually turned out to be a really good thing that I said no. If I would have said yes, then I'd have been going home to my wife and saying, oh, I know that, I've been working a lot, but I'm going to go to dinner with someone I hardly know because they're in town tomorrow night. You know what I'm, like, this is the problem. We have to have some power in our lives to say no, because when you say yes to the wrong things, you said no to your sole purpose. Warren Buffett said, and apparently I'm just going to quote him throughout the night, Warren Buffett said, and I'll just give you a few bonuses because he has some really good quotes, but he said, the difference between successful people and highly successful people is that successful people say yes to almost everything, and highly successful people say no to almost everything other than that which aligns with their sole purpose. And he said, highly successful people say yes to Leslie and Garrett's offer at the end of the night, but no to everything else, by the way.
Well, I want to jump into the story soon.
So you want me to finish this, is what you're saying?
If you plan on it.
Okay, I'll just finish it real quick. Third one's value creation, which sounds really simple, but one of the tougher things for people to figure out how to truly create value. That's part of your mental capital. And what I look to do in life is say, rather than just finding additives, that sounds like a food term, I don't know if I'm using it properly, but addition, mental capital plus relationship capital, I'm constantly looking for ways to find multipliers. I just hired a COO for Freedom Fast Track, Norm, who's in the room tonight, and that's a multiplier. Because if he focuses on the how and when, and I focus on the what and why, and we become a team that way where he's working in alignment with his soul purpose, I'm working in alignment with my soul purpose, delegating the things that are not in alignment with my soul purpose, we can accomplish a lot more as an organization, reach more people, and live our mission. So that's a multiplier. Because I learn things from him, I know he's learning things from me, maybe a lot of things not to do in real estate, but also some other good things, and that's a multiplier. So where are the multipliers in your life? How do you multiply your mental and relationship capital? When I learned how to do teleseminars, total multiplier. I could have 150 people plus off of 2 or 3 emails listening on a teleseminar without having to organize an event and then getting them in our program. It multiplied us solving problems for people, us creating service, and us delivering value. So the bridge between mental capital and relationship capital is what I call business. It's business. So we're all in business of our sole purpose. If you say, oh, I'm not a business owner, I'm not an entrepreneur, nope, you are. We all are business owners over our sole purpose and delivering value, solving problems, and serving. And so this bridge is the key. Someone that has a bunch of mental capital and no relationship capital we call broke and arrogant. Right? So I'm not saying one way is right, one way is wrong. I'm just saying that this is the equation that if anyone thinks they have a financial problem, it's coming from either mental capital or relationship capital. So that's why we say you're an idea or relationship away. Anything else on that?
Well, on this whole equation, I would just say that what Trevin and I experienced when we met Garrett in the first place is a real example of how this works. When we met him and were starting to build a relationship, it began when his office called me about 2.5, 3 years ago and said, hey, we like Jackrabbit Factor. Would you be interested in being a guest on our radio show? I said, sure.
Let me at least tell the backstory because
Okay.
It's kind of funny. So my co-author, Stephen Palmer of Killing Sacred Cows, added a book to our book list called Jackrabbit Factor. And I said, dude, I haven't read that book, so I don't think we can put it on the book list because that would be out of integrity for me to recommend something I hadn't read. And he goes, then read it. I say, oh, okay. So, I read the book, and after reading it, I also gave it to Garrett White, who read it, and he was like, he starts integrating into our coaching, he starts using it throughout everything, so I was like, I want to meet Leslie, because my wife said that she was going to meet Leslie or her sister with her company. I'm like, no, I want to meet, so we reached out to her and get an interview and have her on the radio, since we really like Jack.
He wanted to beat his wife to it, right?
Yeah, competitive.
I didn't know that was going on. I just said, okay. So we did the radio show and had a great time.
And the big lesson there is, it's not like, we just emailed you, right, Leslie? It's not like, most people won't even try. Oh, that so-and-so's busy, or they won't respond. Leslie responded.
Well, who has a radio show what author wouldn't want to talk about their book on a radio show?
Yeah, by the way, everyone has that, It's like, hey, you want to come and speak in front of a bunch of people? No, I hate speaking. Want to come tell some jokes to a group of people? No. Of course you didn't say yes. It's easy. Everyone's got that button. All right, I'm going to be quiet.
All right. I lost my train of thought. So we did the radio show, and when I really didn't know what they were all about or anything, had a great time on the show. His partner, they were a lot of fun to do the show with. And then they found out I was coming here to Salt Lake about 3 years ago in this very room to do an event and on our materials. And he said, well, hey, when you're getting ready to come out, let's have you on the radio show again. We'll promote the event. We'll help you fill the room. I'm like, free marketing? We were coming from a place of just having to do everything all on our own. So for someone to step forward and say, hey, I have something of value and I can help you, honestly, we were thinking, all right, what does he really want? You know what I mean? Because people just aren't that genuine. Our experience has been, if someone's really being so nice and helpful, it's because they have an agenda. And so we were suspicious, but we weren't going to say no to the opportunity. So he said, now, wait a minute. We promote this event, it's going to fill up, and what are we going to do with all the people who can't get in? How about, would you mind if we brought our video guy in to do a webcast for those who couldn't attend? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Do you know what that cost? Are you going to bill me? Because I know what this costs if you don't have the setup already. And he did. He had it to offer, and he offered it. And that event, by the way, is the one that is on our website, the Stickman video, thoughtsalive.com/stickman. Incredible event. You'll see Garrett introduces us. Or me, I say us because Trevin is such a big part of this. He's the brains behind it all. But Garrett said, well, and do you need someone to introduce you? I'm like, great. I knew he was doing a run for his New York Times campaign, and I'm thinking, he's going places. I wouldn't mind this relationship working out. So he comes, we do this event, he introduces me, and it goes really well. And then after that, we just started the conversation. We started coming to his events because I could see that he had, I read Killing Sacred Cows, and actually that was the first financial book that I think I have ever read from cover to cover. Because to me, it was Jackrabbit Factor 202. It was the principles in real world application, in real financial scenarios with real money, not just philosophy, not just a dream. You know, this is real money. And he understands how it works with real money. His analogies in there of the receipts and everything else, it's like, oh my gosh, this is huge. This is what we need to learn next. And so we started following him around and learning what he knew. And then we start going through our real tough financial problems. And Garrett was there to help us apply this equation when we were in scarcity, when we were in fear, when we were fighting that question, what are we going to do if the money runs out? Because, you know, just a little side note, when I had decided that I wanted to take Jackrabbit Factor on a New York Times run, I wanted to campaign for that. We had set the year aside for that. Just at that time, Trevin quit his job so that he could help me with this. We were working on the business together. He came from IT, so he was working on the web, the back end of everything we were doing. And just as we decided to do this, he quit his job. That was a leap of faith in itself. There's a story behind that for another time. We find out I'm expecting, unexpectedly. And some of you know that when I am expecting, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. I am not fun to be around when I'm expecting. And honestly, the minute those hormones kicked in, I'm like, I'm so done with business, I don't want to do anything. I'm done. I don't care what happens to it. And I'm just going to bed. And he had just quit his job to do this big campaign, and I was done. And so that was kind of the beginning of those challenges. And long story short, we're getting to the end of our visible resources. And Garrett and his team started coaching us and started teaching us about this equation. And what this equation means to me is more than just the philosophy around it, but what it means to me application-wise is when you're feeling that panic, when that panic sets in, you just focus on one of these two. Forget the money. Forget the money, because in that moment that you're having that fear, in that moment, you have everything you need. In that moment, you have air to breathe. In that moment, you have shelter. In that moment, you have food, or you have at least what you ate, right? In that moment, you're surviving. You don't have to worry about survival mode because you're already alive. You're already breathing. And one thing I like to tell people is that surviving financially when you've taken a leap and it didn't quite go the way you expected it was going to go is kind of like learning how to swim. You've heard stories, maybe it happened to you, where a parent wants to teach their child how to swim, so they just throw them in the water. You've heard that? Been there, done that. First-hand experience. If you're teaching someone how to swim who does not know how to swim, what is the first thing they have to learn how to do? Even before breathing, going under, float, even before, where was it? Relax, right? Because if they're like this, and they're going to drown, right? Same thing with your finances. If you're freaking out because of your finances, you're going under. You cannot afford to freak out. Number one is relax. Relax. And it's an act of faith to relax when all evidence is against you. But this is a principle. I dare you to test it. I dare you to test it. How many of you have tested that? Where you're in this panic mode and you choose to relax. Did you know that oxygen itself is a relaxing substance for muscles? I learned this when my son was going in for heart surgery at 4 days old. I asked the doctor, he was on oxygen, and I was trying to understand what the oxygen was doing for him. And she said, if you were to put a muscle in a test tube with oxygen, the muscle would relax. I don't know if that's true, but that came from the cardiologist. And so yes, it supplies oxygen to your brain and it keeps you alive and everything else, but it's a relaxant. So first thing, if you're going to relax and you want to relax, is breathe. All right, so someone swimming or trying to swim, they're freaking out. First thing is relax, because they'll find out if they relax and take a deep breath, what will happen? They'll float, and you float financially. I promise you, this is a principle you can test and prove, that when you think that all disaster is all around you, breathe, relax, and start focusing on these other things, and let the money take care of itself for a while. It's already a disaster. You're only going to make it worse if you don't do this, right? So what other options do you have anyway? So think about this. Back in the water, breathe, relax, breathe. What are we doing here?
Opening your airway.
What does it do for a person who's learning how to float to keep their head back? Helps them float, right? Have you ever tried to help a child float and they keep doing this and they just sink, right? Keep your chin up. I know that's cliche, but it works financially too. Take a deep breath, relax, keep your chin up. What are we doing? We're trying to keep in tune with that spark of genius that's going to get you out of it. You have to put yourself in that position of being relaxed. Otherwise, you've cut yourself off from the channel of solutions. Every problem has a solution, or it wouldn't be called a problem. I don't know what you'd call it.
An inconvenience.
An inconvenience. So Garrett started teaching us this, and we were testing it. And actually, as we realized that Garrett's materials were so in alignment with what I was doing, but his was at such a different, more intellectual, more educated level. I mean, his stories are all about being being president of major companies and stuff like that, and I'm a stay-at-home mom of 7. All right? And so what's really cool is that we have very little in common, but the principles have proved true for him, and they've proved true for me. Isn't that cool? Very cool. I think it's really awesome. So as we were getting to know him better, and we realized, you know what? This is what he does. His sole purpose is to be out there talking about these principles. What if we just put his name on Jackrabbit Factor and let him go? Because I wanted the message to get out, but I was pregnant. And, you know, or whatever. I'm still raising my family, and I have this inner struggle between my role as mother and this passion that says you've got to get this out to people and whatever. And that's a wrestle that I wove through into Portal to Genius. So if you know anybody that struggles with that, that's in there as well. Like I said, it follows several characters. It spans 20 years. That story spans 20 years. Jackrabbit Factor, if you remember, spans 1 day. And so what Portal to Genius does is it gives you a 10-year flashback and then a 10-year ahead so that you can see the real story all around it. But as we talked with Garrett, we determined that instead of just putting his name on it and letting him go with it, he and Trevin both agreed that it needed to be a sequel. What do you think my thought was?
You had to write it. You need an idea for Trevor and I.
Yeah, nice idea, man. Yeah. Okay, but you know what? Deep inside, I knew that it needed to happen because of the things that I had learned since writing Jackrabbit. I had to get it out, had to do it, and I thought, all right, fine, I will do it if I can go stay with my mother for 2 weeks, have no distractions, she feeds me, you know, and I'll just get the download. I've heard that can happen, right? Jackrabbit Factor took me 2 years. It was in the middle of us moving. We were in a 2-bedroom house with 6 kids, fixing it, flipping it, you know, getting ready for this. My husband worked 2.5 hours away. It was chaos, absolute chaos. And so when I think of writing a book, that's what I was remembering. I'm like, I don't want to do that again. So, all right, I'll do it 2 weeks at my mother's house, and I'll just get it done before January 1st of that year, which was a year ago. So I went, and about halfway through, you know what happened? I got on a roll, and I hit this wall. Just absolutely stopped me, and I'm like, oh, I can't be blocked now. I've still got 4 days left here, and I have to finish before I go home or it won't get done. And blocked. So I'm just laying there. I'm like, I don't know. I'm waiting for the spark of genius, the portal to genius, which, by the way, who wants to know the original name of the book? He's laughing.
I can't even remember it.
You can't even remember it?
It's a really confusing thing.
Hassen Pfeffer in Munich. Who knows what Hassen Pfeffer is? What is it? Rabbit stew. Cool, huh? Anyway, so it ended up being a chapter title instead of the actual book. I presented the idea to him. It didn't go over very well. He was going to be, part of the real marketing side of this book, and he didn't think he could do much with that, so we had to change it.
I don't even think I could Google it and have it say, "Did you mean?" Not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a very meaningful title. There is a lot of meaning behind it. Those of you who read the book, you know. It's like, nachos at halftime. That was another possible. It's very meaningful, I promise. Anyway, so it's Portal to Genius, a little more descriptive of the actual meaning of the book. So I hit this block, and then finally the download came. You know what that spark said? It said, "You can't finish this book because you haven't lived it yet." Oh, haven't I been through enough? If I could just list some of the things that we went through during those years. It's comical. I can laugh about it now. All right, so I haven't lived it yet. And I called and told you that. What did you think when I said that? You're thinking, cool, huh? We were both kind of just stumped. All right.
And here's what's funny is we did this teleseminar where we said, here's when the book's coming out, and the teleseminar didn't record. So I was really glad that it didn't. Otherwise, we would have had all this pressure.
I forgot about that.
And remember, it didn't record. I was like, that was a good teleseminar. No one's ever going to hear it but us. Because it was just us on the line.
I totally forgot about that.
And we had declared the date multiple times through it because I'm like, the power of declaration, if we just declare it, then that'll create the accountability. And
there is a lot.
Someone was looking out for you on that one.
Yeah. Well, like you said, if you know what you're going to have to do, sometimes you won't do it. And I went into it thinking, okay, I'll get it done in 2 weeks, or I might not have started. You know what I mean? Anyway, the way it works. So put the book aside and just went about life. And about 6 months later, we went through, it's like labor, okay? Transition, all right? That next 6 months was like transition. And
I think it's also kind of like labor in that you did a second book that you forgot the pain in the first one.
Yeah.
And, because you were the one that wrote it, I was like, good luck.
Well, I don't want him to discount his contribution to this book. You'll see in it, the characters in there, there were so many times where I'm like, Garrett, I'm writing something here that I have no experience with. He's like, oh, no problem. I've got a file full of experiences we could draw from. And so
as a matter of fact, I made her change names in the book because I'm like, there's that name keeps making me think of this one experience, and I just would rather, I've kind of tried to put it behind me.
Yeah, I missed that one, but it's all right. So anyway, 6 months later, finally, the baby's born, and Trev and I were like, Garrett, we know how this is going to end. That's the thing, with Jackrabbit Factor, I knew the ending before I began. And the whole story was all about getting to that ending. With this one, I was going blind. Both of us were we know what we wanted included in it, but what's the conclusion? What's the thing at the end that can have that transformation, that catalyst for people? And we were both we'd go in circles about what it ought to be, what it ought to be. So finally, after 6 months, Trevin and I had the experience at the restaurant. And I knew what had to be in the book, and we knew how to wrap it up. And what's really incredible to me about the story and the production of it is that it was a function of the very thing that it teaches. That project in itself was a function of what it teaches. And some of the things that I want to leave with those who are listening tonight and on the webcast is that, number one, you're not too late. You're never too late to discover that soul purpose. You may think that by your age or whatever that, oh, you know what, If I had discovered it when I was 20, if I had discovered it when I was 30, whatever, then maybe I could have done something with it. You know, Colonel Sanders didn't discover his till he was about 65, right? But the fact is, you weren't any is this a word? You were not any readier, you were not more ready for figuring it out than you are now. This is the perfect time for you to at least get a little closer to it. You may be like I was when I was watching Rudy, is that I was being groomed for it, but it wasn't time yet. Just be open to it, because this will be there. You will be supported in discovering it and fulfilling it. You will be supported in that. And, you know, Garrett talks about the secret being narcissistic a little bit. Originally, you know, when you discover that the principles in the Jackrabbit Factor work, a lot of times the first reaction is, oh, what could I get? What could I get? What are these selfish things that I could gratify myself with? And, you know, it's a little bit of a teaser. Maybe a little bit just to help you discover that there is really something there that you can work with. But ultimately, those miracles, that sense of purpose, that satisfaction, the fulfillment, the legacy, the life's purpose, and all of those things that we really long for are accomplished by getting clear on that. And so I'd like to also just say that, you know, Trev and I, we've experienced no money, and we've experienced relatively a lot of money, and back to like no money, and lots of debt or no debt. We've been all over the map with that. And I can tell you that the financial security that Garrett talks about, we have been in fear with a lot of money. We have been in fear with no money. The money and the amount that you have is not the determining factor. That fear, that peace of mind, that financial peace of mind comes best when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's the security. So I don't know if you've noticed, but in a lot of the programs I've done, or the slideshows or the PowerPoints or whatever, my message is financial peace of mind. What do you think people think when they see that? Most people think that, oh, she's going to teach me how to get $1 bazillion. No, I'm going to teach you how to have financial peace of mind. And if you need $1 bazillion to fulfill your purpose, you'll get it. If you don't need it to fulfill your purpose, why do you need it? Do you have anything to say on that?
On that, or just
anything? I'm done.
No, I'm totally out of words for tonight. No, everyone knows I'm completely joking on that, but I just want to speak to Portal to Genius for a minute and why I think that it's profound. And I say that not as being a co-author, because I really feel honored to be on the cover with Leslie, because really I was willing to give that information in whatever format, just as part of our relationship and as the, you know, as a situation of mentoring or whatever that might be. And I just feel honored to be part of it, because it's a book that when I read it the first time, because the secret's out of the bag, I mean, she wrote it. I'm on there because relationship capital, because of watching The Benevolent Power of Soul Purpose, which was a symposium that we did and recorded, and only 85 people had ever seen that were there live, but I had an audio of it that she listened to and incorporated it. So I love it, because it keeps these things alive that we only had such a limited impact with, and now we can have a deeper and wider impact with them. And
he you know, with his name on the book, we can say New York Times bestselling author.
New York Times bestselling author is bigger in font than Leslie or my name is. That's how important it was. So I did want to leverage that, because I did spend a lot of money to, you know, have that marketed in time and everything. So, but what I love about this book is when I was flying from back east and then going to Arizona to speak, And when I read it, there was twice on the airplane where I cried. And I mean, didn't want to be, I wanted to look tough and be a man, but I was crying because it was engaging. And the difference between this and a book like Killing Sacred Cows is this story, so you get captivated, you get engaged. And I just want to let you know that most of the stories in that are based upon truth, based upon real experiences, based upon real people, and as a matter of fact, a lot of it based upon either people I know and have worked with, or even experiences in my life or Leslie and Trevin's life. So there will be, although it's a fictional story, a sense of authenticity to it, like a sense of realness to it. And it deals with some of the most debilitating dilemmas that entrepreneurs face. An entrepreneur if there's an entrepreneur that's married to someone that is not entrepreneurial, that is one of the biggest conflicts in marriage. And I think this book is brilliant at bridging that gap, at bringing that type of peace to the non-entrepreneur in that marriage that constantly feels fear and worry for the financial present and future of that family, and this addresses it. I've said multiple times, I believe in all these things, but if something happened to my kids, that would test me the course. So guess what? There's stuff in this book testing those very things in this story that as you read about and some of the research that Leslie did with people that had those very things happen in their life, and they're sharing that, you're seeing that emotion come out because that was real. And just to address that and to think about this from stories of how does someone go from being an employee that's constantly complaining to seeing their greatness and going to the point where they're actually instrumental in bringing about a massive purpose in this world with that company they're involved in. How does a company that doesn't know how they're going to come up with money in less than a week find that money to fund their passion? And it's those questions. If you just read the questions in the book, highlight those questions that are asked, and you notice that most of the time they're asked from someone like a spouse, someone like a mentor, and that the greatest breakthroughs in the book, this is what I think is so true, is the greatest breakthroughs happen when there's transparency and admission from the character saying, I don't know, I'm struggling, I'm frustrated, I'm afraid. And when they have that admission to someone that is, they would consider that they want to look good to, like, oh, I want to position myself as I've got everything figured out to this person, but you actually admit what's going on. Most people are so afraid to do that because they think it's going to push them away, but it is one of the most endearing characteristics we have as human beings, is to be authentic and transparent in that moment and draw them in, because we know that everyone has not completely just had the easy path and always made the right choice, that we've had struggles, we've had pain, and part of it is helping people through that makes us feel valuable. That someone's willing to share that with us. In this book, when you read it, if you look at it from just those few perspectives, what are the questions that are being asked? How is the relationship capital developed? How are they solving problems? How are they serving? How are they discovering value creation? You will see the prosperity equation fully illustrated that I think you could then apply to your life.
The characters in there, we've got a teenage son, we've got a 6-year-old son, we've got a wife of an entrepreneur, we've got a wife of an employee, we've got a wife of a president of a company, we've got a president of a company, we've got a surgeon who doesn't want to be a surgeon anymore, we've got, who else have we got? We've got...
I love the story too of when we were talking and, she's writing about this valve and all this medical stuff and, talking about the size of the building. I'm like, I drive by this place every day. It's about 2 miles from the office. Just drive straight up this road. And she goes there. And what do they make?
Well, I'm trying to figure out, how does this plant where the guy works, what does it look like? How does it work? Because I have not lived the corporate world. And he says, well, there's a place up the hill from our office. Why don't you go check it out, see what it's like? It sounds a little bit like what you're talking about. Because in the story, it's a medical devices plant. They create medical devices. And so I get up there, I go to the door, and I'm like, this looks about what I kind of pictured. I go inside, and I say, what do you guys do? She says, we're a medical devices plant.
I drive by this place every day on my way home. It's 2 miles
I'd never
from the
even
office.
I don't know if I've ever in my life known of any medical devices plant. I just needed to make one up for the story. And now I know they exist.
Well, that's the thing with relationship capital is sometimes, it's not like we had that relationship capital. It was just a little tiny piece of mental capital that lent new relationship capital. Just like when we were going through the first version, I happened to have a doctor in the room that day that said, oh, actually, this it would be called this. And it's just like part of it's you take the action. You can't believe who's been around you or when they show up. It feels a little, it just feels a little bit magical. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that it's always there, but we can finally see it. Why? Because we're engaged in the right conversation. Because we now have the awareness. Because we have purpose. Because purpose creates that opportunity. If your only purpose in life is to be, have $1 million, that's a limited purpose. You're not going to see a lot of what's going on in life than if your purpose is a revolution in health or, whatever it is, whatever that might be for you. For whoever it is that wants to revolutionize and simplify technology, please contact our firm any time now. Any minute now, that'd be great. But I love the book from what we're talking about. I think it's a great read, and it's something that you will probably, if you start, finish all the way through versus, anyone here have Killing Sacred Cows and not finished it? You don't have to raise your hand. But yeah, it's a harder book to get through. I know, I get it. It's okay. But the likelihood of you finishing this is off the charts. And what we want to do is say, okay, that's one form of mental capital. A book is a form of mental capital, but there's another dimension to mental capital. And that is actually getting into what are ways for you to be resourceful. What are ways that you can personally be more resourceful, meaning whether you have the money or not, you can find the funds to fuel your passion. And we're doing a teleseminar series on this. 3 teleseminars, okay? The third of the teleseminar is going to incorporate relationship capital. I talked about wealth being a conversation. Well, how about if we do this? We'll allow you to get 5 Portal to Genius books tonight. If you get 5 books, or is it the other way around?
If you sign up for the teleseminar series, we're going to give you 5 free Portal to Genius books.
And the reason we're giving you the books is so that you could share those with your fave 5 so that you've engaged in a new conversation. Remember, you got unlimited calling on that plan and all that kind of thing? And so now you have them engaged in the conversation, and that creates new support, that creates new accountability. And you can also invite them to the teleseminar. And on the third teleseminar, it's going to be about how you develop a mastermind group, how you develop a mastermind community. And now you're on the phone with them, and you continue this in your life so that you can integrate and incorporate these principles and these concepts and see real results of prosperity, because that is how you build relationship capital. You're going to give a gift. You're going to invite people to a conversation. You're going to have that conversation now replace complaining and embrace wealth. And so it's $97 is the investment for the 5 books and the 3 teleseminars. Do we have forms, Tricia, that we can pass out? Do we have forms that we're passing out?
And what I would recommend is give the book as a gift, and don't tell them about the teleseminar series right up front. Give them a chance to read the book, maybe give them a time frame. Say, hey, read this by such and such a date or whatever. When they're done with the story, you're going to have something to talk about. And that's when you can say, hey, we're getting on a teleseminar with Garrett and Leslie. I've already paid for it. I can get you in on it free. No, for those on the webcast, there is an additional fee for shipping. That's all. That's what I was talking about when I said there's added benefits for being here in person. But, that's how it goes. Because you're really getting the 5 books and the teleseminar series for less than the cost of 5 books.
And these guys paid for gas to get to this building. So I think it's only fair.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really creative way for 2 authors to sell more than 1 book to an individual. Wouldn't you agree? But we didn't just do it by saying, please, we're starving artists, please support us by buying extra. We said, what can we do to deepen the value and create value for people? And let's go through. How many examples do we have of specific ways to be resourceful?
Pages.
Just so, if you're saying, well, I can't afford to do this. No, we'll show you there's a way to do it.
Well, and these are things that we have literally done. We just brainstormed and said, okay, what have we done over the years to be resourceful when we thought we didn't have what we needed to do the next thing? And we started listing them. And those are some of the things we're going to share during the teleseminar series to help get your juices flowing, so to take away your excuses, to get that lid off your brain so that instead of saying, well, I don't have or I can't do, there's always a way.
If this is compelling to you, you want to, take advantage of it, feel free to. Our intention was to create massive value for tonight and make you happy, and then hopefully, for the right people, you take advantage of the offer and it makes you even happier, and then from there you continue to invite more prosperity into your life, and then we know that'll all come back to all of us. So that's the intention. I'm not going to give you a hard sell or anything like that, but I am going to give you an opportunity for questions because we do have 7 minutes before we conclude tonight. And if you're on the video cast, you can type in and chat with Neil, unless you're watching this recorded, which you'll find out if it's recorded because you're going to type in and no one's going to even acknowledge that you're there. But that's okay, because we're just making sure that you get this, and I feel connected to you through the web, All right, any questions? And don't be afraid, I will be much nicer than I was earlier, if I was mean. Yes? Oh, please. Okay, so it's $97 for 3 teleseminars. The secrets to being resourceful. We're going to go through specific examples of where you can find hidden money. And you might kind of want, this is kind of a big deal too, is if you get the book, you get a 7-step cash recovery analysis, which is a one-on-one consultation with my trained consultants, where they're going to look at 7 key areas where most people are leaking money. When I say most people are leaking money in all 7, but we've yet to find someone that isn't leaking money in one of the 7. As a matter of fact, 2 of them are major for, when we talk to our dentists, I'm like, 9 out of 10 dentists find out that 2 of these are completely major for their life. You know how they're always 9 out of 10 dentists recommend stuff? So basically, you're going to find money that's leaking. And if you're totally cool with that money going to the government or to the financial institutions or to, I don't know where else it goes. That's pretty much sums up most places. Instead of you and where you want to spend it, whether it's investing it, whether it's enjoying more of your life, we're going to show you how to really be resourceful in a personalized and customized way, because you get 5 of those, because each one of the books have an offer with the 7-step cash recovery in it, and that's a live human being you talk to. And you don't have to give us your social security numbers or anything like that. You just need to show up on the phone call. But if you schedule that call and don't show up, let me show you what happens. The relationship capital looks like this. No good. I want to offer it and be generous, but at the same time, I only want you to take it if you're totally committed to it, because these people's time is extraordinarily valuable, and I don't want you to take time from someone else that could have had that slot. So just make sure you're totally committed to it if you choose to do it. Because if we find 7 areas where you're leaking money, we're going to say, cool, you want to go do something on your own, or would you like more help from us? If you say, well, we'd like more help from you, here's what's going to happen. We're going to send you to someone we call an enrollment director, aka salesperson. And the salesperson then says, here's how you could actually do this much easier, because we have an accredited network that can actually do it with, for you. And we've got a coach that will help you build your blueprint and actually make sure that you know what you're doing. So yes, we have some motives on the other end. We do put a $497 value, which is a low value compared to what we find for most people. I mean, if we just put the value on how much cash are you missing out on, it's constant that it's thousands of dollars a year, that, at a minimum hundreds of dollars a year. So I think it's well worth the time.
Cool.
Yeah. Website is portaltogenius.com/secrets.
That's if you are not registering here. If you go there, you're going to be charged shipping for the books that we would be sending you.
Yep.
And also at that page is where, if you have the 5 books and you pass out 4 of them to your friends or family and they want to join the teleseminar, they'll also go to that page down at the bottom. It requires a password that you'll give them where they can sign up for free.
How many books do we have here tonight? Okay, so we will sign them if it doesn't devalue the book in your mind. We will be happy to sign it for you. So we're giving you the full equation here. The financial capital comes from the one-on-one consultation. The relationship capital comes from the mastermind event and giving you multiple books to share, and the mental capital is highly emphasized on the first 2 teleseminars, which is how does this apply to one's life? Okay.
So is this equation and this stuff in a book?
We said we're going to share specific stories on things that we've done to be resourceful when we thought we were out or didn't have the resources we needed. He talks about how you're going to find, he'll help you know how to find money. In my experience, some of what I'm going to be bringing is how to accomplish what you needed to do without the money you think you need for it. One of the stories that I'll share, I'm not going to share it now, but it was Trevin and I had to come up with, I think 5 figures in the bank account like immediately, and we had exhausted all the possibilities that we could come up with, and as we just relaxed our mind and just kind of went quiet, all of a sudden the thought came to me, and it dawned on me what we could do instead of that, and it worked. So it's...
Do we share the whole story of how the book was written and then how you guys came up with the $40,000 idea?
We're doing that on the third call.
Okay, so on the third call. See, I give you a lot of content and then I leave you with one major teaser. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions from the webcast are how many slots do you have open for this offer and how long does the offer last?
Oh, look at this. You guys have been trained when you're asking questions like that. We're going to use the law of scarcity in our closes, which says,
Well,
hey, we are never going to sell more than this amount, and the offer absolutely expires at a certain time. When does it expire?
Well,
Yeah,
first
so you
thing,
can
hang
tell
on.
we really give it thought. It expires at midnight tonight.
Let me tell
And we're only
you,
taking the first 5 people. And no more, ever, right? Isn't that how it works?
I know how many books we have out there because we had to pull from 3 different locations to get as many as we could here. There are literally less than 200 books even available anywhere
Yeah, if you
right
want
now.
your book quick, you sign up tonight. If you want to be delayed, you wait.
If you get in on it now, those of you who are here, you probably get to walk home with the books in hand.
And a signature.
Otherwise,
That's like worth a lot.
it could be 3 weeks before you get your book, and then you might not have time to pass them out before the series begins. And we strongly recommend that you have the book read before the series begins to get the most out
I
of
just
that.
want to emphasize the signature one more time because it's kind of a big deal.
Well, anytime you
both.
mention that. We do have one very extra special book. I'm going to mention it. It's not for sale. One day it will go on auction. It's where he signed my name and I signed his.
And I sign beautifully if you've ever seen my signature. It's a masterpiece. So, well, I want to thank everyone for investing their time, investing in themselves, for being fully engaged, for great energy that you brought tonight, other than the gentleman that fell asleep, which I won't point you out or anything like that. So thanks for the people that especially attended online. I know that there's a lot of distractions when you're online, but if you really focus, paid attention, then I know it'll turn into prosperity. Thanks, Leslie, and Trevin for traveling up, and have a wonderful evening.
Good night.